Hi, everyone. Thank you very, very much for joining me and joining Ed as well. Thank you, Ed, for joining me. And I'm really pleased to be on Ed's channel tonight as well. So this is going live in those two places. Amazing to see you all here. Say hello in the comments. Let us know you can hear us loud and clear and see us loud and clear. We're going to talk about these two devices tonight, the Supernote Manta and the Boox Note Air 4C. Now, Ed, it's happened, hasn't it? So if you check out Ed's channel, you will already see some content where he's been actually getting to grips with the Boox Note Air 4C. This is a totally different operating system for you. I'm gonna say hello, and then I'm gonna dive straight in with the first question, Ed.
Yeah. Thanks, Kid, and welcome everybody. Thanks for being on both this dual live stream here. It's a lot of fun. I was joking with Kit before we started that this is all his fault. So it's he is the reason that I now have multiple devices, along with some other friends. I mean, I have some really good friends in the community, and they've all kind of said, "Hey, you should talk about these things, and you shouldn't just stick with one particular device." And so I've been enjoying it. I mean, I'm a tech nerd anyway, and we'll get into a lot of that, but I appreciate Kit for reaching out, saying, let's get out and talk about this. I appreciate all of you for signing in and being on both channels. I think it's going to be a good time, and we'll have a good discussion. And I am ready for a little bit of heat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you've been such a staunch supporter of the Supernote Manta, and I've been such a staunch supporter of the books, even to the point of earning myself the nickname Kit Books Masters at one point. It was some people were calling me because they thought I was just so biased, I think. But you made it clear. You said, I'm a user of the Supernote. I'm not looking to switch. The content that you've made has been incredibly useful for people for getting the most out of Supernote. I know I've learned a lot from you about managing the Supernote platform. If you want to go in depth for how to use this, which now I've currently am making this my top spot, my #1 e-ink tablet you can buy. I really do rate this Supernote Manta. I also rate the Boox Note Air 4C, but I think for the core uses of an e-ink tablet, the Supernote Manta is amazing. So this is my first question for you. Let's fire straight in. You're a Supernote aficionado. I'm really interested to know how you've been getting along with your first books. I really am. So can you just straight away give me 3 things that you've really loved about the books? 3 things that you really have enjoyed so far?
Yeah, and I actually I had to really think about this because for me, I'll just say right now, color's not one of the things. It's not that I dislike color, and we'll talk about that later, but the things for me, one of them that was a standout feature right away was the calendar memo. I love the fact on the books that you can write on your calendar memo, and then when you go to your widgets on your homepage, now that depends on the device, I believe, because only devices that support widgets would do this. But you go to that quick access or that quick start page, and you can see those writings. You can see that.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
pretty cool
So I'm
feature.
on this side. I don't use that, as you can see. I don't use
Yeah,
that
here
very
I
much
can
at
show
all.
you real quick
Yeah.
if you want me to.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
this is
If
just
you
one of my favorite things. So and you'll see I took my notes for today on the Note Air 4C. So those of you who've watched me a long time are probably going, gasp. But so if I go back and I go home and I go to my quick settings, and I could put it somewhere else too, but right here, this these are the notes I made for the live stream and the things I needed to get done. And I can also enter from here. So it's really a cool feature. The MobiScribe Wave actually has a similar feature that shows the calendar writing on the homepage, and Supernote just doesn't do that. I mean, they do a lot of other things, but they don't do that. And I just think it's a really interesting feature that kind of sets this platform apart.
Yeah, fascinating.
And
One of the things I've always thought about Supernote is they don't really have a homepage view. I mean, that homepage is really, it's just kind of the slider view, isn't it? And that, I mean, that's been a sort of a good thing. But I always think the Supernote homepage is just that slider in a way. So, might it be worth them learning and adding the calendar memo as a block here, or giving you that option to do that. Interesting one. Cool. That's your first one. Another one.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, again, I was trying to think of, because I have adapted somewhat to using the Boox ecosystem when using the device, and that's a really useful tool. One, which I know you're not a big fan of, but my second one is actually the scribble erase.
Oh, I hate the scribble erase. Yeah. Why do I hate the scribble erase? Because I think I'm more, I use it quite a lot for sketching, and I'm
Yep.
often sketching things out. And I also find that it's quite temperamental. There we go. And I think you have to really go for it to get it to scribble. In my opinion.
And I found that when I'm taking intentional notes, it
Yeah.
works really well, because I think I put myself in that headspace of put enough pressure and go ahead and scribble that out. And it hits most times. I mean, I still find myself trying to use my two-finger gesture, and
Yeah.
but it works really well. I was surprised how much I liked it with that particular component. So it was one of my favorite features, actually, because I don't like going to my toolbar, and
No.
the settings and the toolbars on Boox, and we'll get to that later, but it's crazy, and it's very hard to know exactly what you're going to need. This keeps me from having to worry about that feature. So to
Yeah.
me, that's a really powerful tool. And
Cool.
then
I
the
love that.
last thing, oh, go ahead, Kit.
No, I was going to say maybe this is going to be the next one, but the kind of smart scribe, they're good things in a way. I like the circle to lasso thing, but again, there we go. Work that second time there.
I
That
like the
circle with the pen is good. The scribble, not so much, but yeah.
I like the circle lasso. I didn't put it on here because to me it's a little temperamental, especially if you get to the edges of the screen. It'll sometimes not register. It sees it as two different strokes, and so it'll cause me an issue. But I do find myself, if I'm in the middle of the text, it works really well. But as far as favorites, is something that doesn't have mark. I absolutely love the idea of free mark. And I don't know if you've used that much yet, but I just think it's similar to what I've seen Jeff Moss do with the Bigme global handwriting. It's not as well implemented as that, but it's similar. And I just like being able to be in a book in Kindle or be in a book in Kobo and hit that free mark function and write on whatever I'm in. It's really cool. It takes that shot.
So it takes a screenshot, free mark, although this app doesn't support it either. So the Boox apps themselves, because you can mark up on top of them anywhere. But when you're in any app you like, as you say, I think you mentioned Kindle, didn't you? When you're in any app at all, you can go ahead and hit the free mark, and then you get a screenshot essentially, which then you can annotate and draw on top of, and then save. Can you save a series of them?
Yeah, you can, and you can save them to a note. What's different with Bigme from what I've seen from Jeff is that you can like have a recurring saved location. So you could like be, you were joking with me about Dante being behind me. I could have the Inferno open and I could mark that up, and I could save all of that in one folder or all of that in one note, and then go back and add in annotations on top of it. So it's really a cool feature. It's not quite as well implemented as the Boox feature is, but just that idea, if someone sends me a web page or someone sends me, a document to review, that I can just go ahead and do that. This book is perfect.
That book is that book is perfect. So good. I'm glad. Yeah, he's actually quite good, Finn the Frog. He's grown on us. So somebody just saw that my Kindle library included the Finn the Frog book there. Awesome.
Hey, kid,
And I thought it was really funny. I don't know if you spotted, but check behind Ed there. And I don't. This wasn't by design. Behind me, this is my copy of Divine Comedy just here. Ed's got his on his book stand just there. We're influencing Ed, but we're really influencing each other more than anything. One reason I love this book stand was thinking about your book stand. It's something we talked about quite quite a while ago, wasn't it? Your amazing rotating book stand. It's a real thing of beauty. And yeah, having the different books on there is just something else. I mean,
yeah, it's really nice, and I mean, it just glides, and it's I love it. It was I think I've told you before, but everybody may not know. My father-in-law actually made that from the original plans for Thomas Jefferson's revolving book stand. So it was the gift he gave me when I graduated with my doctorate. So it was pretty cool. It's one of my favorite things.
Thing of beauty, right? So just a couple of let's have a quick look at the chat as we go. Two things convinced me to use the Boox device over the Supernote, and they were the 13.3-inch of the Note Max. Might have chosen the Supernote if they come up with the A4. Yeah, interesting. There will probably never be an A4 Supernote, as in it won't be called the A4. It will be called something else because their naming conventions are all changed. We're calling this one the Manta. Notice I haven't written an A5X2 on here because they're not using those terms anymore. But yeah, I follow you there. Boox added organizational features might not be as easy to use on the Supernote, but if they're good enough, given the larger size of the Note Max. Yeah, interesting. These are two of the sort of 10.3-inch size devices here. They both have the same size screen, slightly different dimensions of device, but same size screen. Yeah.
Well, the Manta is actually a little bigger.
You're right. Actually, yeah,
it's 10.65. Yeah.
5, isn't it? Yeah, because it's a Carter 1300. Scribble to erase doesn't work as well, and super frustrating there. Yep. I think an erase button is generally the best option. I don't really like turning the pen over for that option. I don't think there's a perfect erase. I actually like the Supernote Manta one when you're on a desk to have the 2-finger gesture, but it's when you're not on a desk, if you're holding it, it's a no-go really. Yeah. And ancient copy of Divine Comedy with the Gustav Dorff prints in it. Oh wow, cool. Had it for at least 50 years. I love this. That is certainly not a short attention span hobby, reading Dante, is it? Love that. Great to see you here. What a great audience. What great people. Note Max, 2 days, a little bit tricky. Yeah, it normally is a bit of a steep learning curve with Boox, but persevere. Do persevere on that. Can you echo that now, Ed, after having used that?
I would say on the learning curve, number one, going back to the Note Max versus, Supernote, I think the size is a huge deal. And I think, Supernote not having that larger size is causing, especially in some of the stuff I do, making that a little bit harder. But I've kind of gotten myself used to using a 10.3 or 10.65-inch device and not having that much friction. As far as the learning curve in general, I think it's interesting. If you're an Android user, I think it's a lot less. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, I was using those swipe gestures pretty quickly to navigate when I was going to the calendar and then back to my quick launcher because I'm used to that interface in some ways. It's the same as it is on my Samsung phone as far as the tools are located. The learning curve to me is when you dig into the UI because it's not intuitive where things live and where they kind of where you would go or think to go to look for them. And that was the hardest part for me. I also took a lot of time to condense down my menu. I watched Voya's video, but I also put all of my apps into buckets the way I do on my phone. So I've really taken some time to customize the device out front so that it makes the experience easier for me as I'm going through doing new things. So it was a lot of setup to begin with. If you're coming from Apple, it's a totally different ecosystem. I'm not hearing you, Kit. I don't know if anybody.
Okay. Next question for you then is what something that surprised you about Boox, either good or bad. I don't mind, but something that has surprised you about Boox. Go for it.
Yeah, I actually have two. So hold on, let me find it. I was quite frankly shocked that I liked this pen. It's not something that, and I think we might have lost Kit.
And I'm here. I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I didn't see you in there. So the pen, to me, it's actually weighted really well. I'm not a fan of the soft nib, and I've already almost gone through one, but it's weighted very well. It fits into the device very well, and it's interesting. I don't mind it a bit, which surprised me. I thought I was going to hate it because I'm coming from the heart of metal, and I still prefer the heart of metal. But I'll show you on the device real quick the other two things that kind of tied. Or I'll show you one of them. This case, I love the fact that it does the origami thing, but it is so heavy. And that's because these magnets are so strong, you have to tear it out of the case when you want it to get out. And I don't care for the flap, but it makes this device, I would say, one of the heaviest pieces of equipment I've ever carried. Once you have it in with these magnets and have that shut, it's chunky. And that surprised me. I was expecting the case to be a little bit, I guess, more streamlined, maybe a little bit less industrial. So that surprised me quite a bit as far as how heavy it is compared to something like the Manta.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
go
that's one
from
thing.
that.
With the half case, I mean, they've literally half the weight of the case there, haven't they? Yeah, very interesting point there.
Yeah, and the magnets. I think the magnets add a lot of weight to the Boox case, and so that surprised me a bit. And the other one, which I can't really show on here, let me get back to my screen, is the app experience. I was kind of surprised that the Boox app wasn't more developed. It seems the web app is pretty similar to the Supernote web app, but the desktop app and the Android phone apps are just light years behind in how they work and how they function and how you view things. And that was a surprise to me. So that was, the bad was kind of a tie between the two. And I would say, if I added a second good thing, it would be that I was surprised my learning curve wasn't worse from the Android side. I'm still learning the actual UI, but the way that the tablet functions at that kind of broad level was a lot easier.
Yeah,
Once
I
you
think
dig
this.
into the menus, it became harder.
Yeah, this comment, is quite telling there. I spent quite a time trying to make the Boox Android look more like my phone. Like, if you're used to an Android phone, then you kind of you get used to the way around an Android. But you're absolutely right. So it's the depth of the Boox menus, and it's kind of like everything you need kind of ends up being in a more menu. And then when you get in the more menu, you've got like 2 pages of menu items. It's because they want to give you the options, I think, which is one choice they've made, and whether that's the right choice for you is another question. But I mean, I probably a bit like Jay on the side of I want the option to do the things, rather than it just be easy but limited. The kind of intuitive app design is an interesting one. I was using my wife's iPhone for something the other day, and I was like, where's the thing to go back? Where's the back button? Why is there never a back button on an iPhone? And what it was is where you hold it down and you swipe it away, and then that's back. You like hold it down until it kind of, and it's like, okay, fine. If you're used to that, then that's the way it is, and that's just back on an iPhone. But when you've just lived your life with an Android back button everywhere, then it's, and it is just about getting to know that thing, and probably, and that's an interesting, that surprised you that you didn't find it so hard. And I think that should give you confidence if you're listening today and you're thinking, should I go this? Will I find that learning curve too steep? If you're used to Android, then it should give you confidence that Ed says he hasn't had a large learning curve going to Boox. But you're right about those menus, mate. It's just when if I go into a menu, like that's a menu, that's a menu, that's a menu. If I had to go there to get back into this menu, and there's more there, and then there's other menus. Each of these are menus, and there's menus here. There's menus for the apps. There's menus for in the settings, there's just menus, and there's an e-ink center to get your head around. You know, there's just so many options. But as I said, that's a choice they've made. It allows you to do things that I very rarely get to the point I can't do it on the Boox, and that's quite nice to know, really. Cool.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to kind of the point of why it took me so long to customize mine was because of the fact that once you customize, especially the floating toolbar, you have to go into customize if you want to get to those other things that you didn't put on there versus the Supernote experience, which the more is the more, and then you still have access to the tools, but it's a far less robust tool set. And I think that's worth pointing out that, you know, to your point, if Boox allowed for, you know, this constant, you know, more, the toolbar could grow exponentially. And even within toolbars, you have more toolbars. And that's been the hardest thing for me to learn is what do I know I'm going to need all the time? And I condensed my toolbar on Boox to deal with that. And once I do that, it makes it much easier to use unless I need something that I wish was in that more category, because now I have to go and, you know, kind of find it or customize the toolbar just for while I'm working on that thing. And it can get a little unwieldy, but the interface itself isn't as daunting as the native apps, I would say. The native apps is where you really get into that clunkiness and where that learning curve really kind of
I agree with this. However, the kind of like the reading app is so it's so much here, but it is such a powerful reading app. And I think the Notes app, I think the Notes app they need to develop, but the reading app is the best reading app, I think, on e-ink, because it takes you a while the first time you go, and I'd be interested to know how you go. I know you use a lot of PDFs. I know you mark up a lot of work, and you're reading a lot of students' work, reading a lot of papers and things like that. I'd be interested to know how you go after living with this PDF reader for a while, because there's nothing that like comes close really to the sheer level of functionality. But the first time you have to find each of the things you need it to do, that will be a pain. But once you know your way around this, and I don't know my way around it, it's a bit like Photoshop. You know, I don't know if you ever use proper Photoshop, but it's such a heavy program. There's so many options, and I am a proficient Photoshop user who probably only ever uses about 5% of the tools that there are in Photoshop, because I just don't need them. So if I go into that toolbar, that menu, it's the same with the video editing software. You know, there's so much of the Premiere Pro. You know, it might be a bit more like 15% of Premiere Pro, but like there's still, I only scratch the surface, but it does what I need it to do. And I think that's one thing. I think when people get something complicated like the Boox, and to a certain extent the Manta, and I know because I've had these conversations with people who've got the Manta, is like, but there's just so much that I want to know all it can do, because I'm kind of afraid of missing out on something. And I say, well, what do you want it to do? What do you need this machine, this device to get you? You know, you need to process your thinking from A to B. You know, you need to use it to do this sequence of thinking, to manage your knowledge in some way. And if it can do that, then you're a successful user of it. I say this to people at work. I say they're worried about their use of computers. Oh, I'm a terrible user of computers. And I say, well, can you make that machine do what you need it to do? And they say, yes. I said, well, you're not a terrible user of computer then, are you? Because you can drive the computer. You can make it get you from A to B. There might be some things you could learn that will speed you up or make things better, but you learn them when you get to those hurdles. And I think that's the case with Boox, really. I just think they need to think about that journey and enable it a little bit more smoothly for people. And yeah, you mentioned Voya's great resource, Better Boox Guide, great idea. Learning to understand what there is and just remove the things you don't want, so they don't clutter up your thinking.
Well, and I would add one thing there, Kit, that I think, you know, you've heard people refer to Remarkable as the Apple of e-ink. Boox is kind of the Adobe. So I think
Yeah.
you made a really good point there, because Adobe, especially for those of us who remember some of their older systems,
Mm.
were a menu-driven monster.
Monster.
And it was just menu after submenu after tool after tool.
Mm.
And it's gotten
Oh,
better over the years, but still that
yeah, but
way.
yeah.
And I think that Boox is kind of in that same vein. It's like we want to give you everything,
Mm.
but there's not a great system
Yeah,
without just trial and error to
correct.
know what you actually need in the moment. So I think that's a great
Yeah, yeah.
analogy. And
I think that's
especially
fascinating.
from someone in the education space, it makes tons of sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, well, Adobe have given the world Adobe Express, for example, and I see kids using that at school, and it's like Photoshop Express. It's just like incredibly cut down web version, but it's just like, here's the basically we've analyzed what people use 90% of the time, and they said, for example, um, about 90% of the time people open up Photoshop is to remove the background from a photo. So of course, what they need is a one-click solution, and that's what Adobe Express basically is. It's like pretty much one click, change the background, add some text or whatever, off you go, export in a different size to wherever you need it to go. But that's an interesting point. We talked about Boox wanting a kind of focus mode, something
Mhm.
where would put the whole device into a very much just like just your bare bones remarkable level tool set, and maybe you could decide what you wanted to add into focus mode, but essentially you can do that yourself by following the advice of Voyo and stripping back the menus where you don't want them. I'm going to look at just dive into the chat just for a moment, then I'm going to ask you our next question, my man. Yeah, so great. Thank you very much, Aaron. Good to see you here.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Aaron.
yeah, I think that's a really astute point there. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and then Jay mentioned the toolbox and the beta. I haven't played with that yet, Jay. I have the betas. I'm on betas on all of my machines, so I will be playing with it. I will say that the new Supernote Digest is crazy. And Kit, I think you're going to love it when you start talking about academic PDFs.
mm,
It's insane. I mean, it is feature packed and just it's something else. And if they had that on a Note Max size device,
wow, yeah.
I think it would give Boox a run for its money, because I agree with you right now. You can do way more with the Neo reader,
Mm,
but the Supernote's still very capable in that
yeah, it
space.
is. Yeah,
And I think if
absolutely.
you add this new digest feature, it's just it's really good.
Yeah, I'm interested in this little thread in the comments here. Sorry, it started with Juan, yeah, saying, anyone enjoying using Boox? It looks to me like the experience of it is far from great. And then we get a whole lot of people saying they love using it, no issues with user experience. So glad I got it rather than an iPad. Not hard at all to communicate with my Mac. Interesting one there. And then, yeah. So, yeah.
I
And
would
then,
definitely prefer it over an iPad. I've used an iPad in the past, Kit, and I 100%, if I was going to go for something and I didn't need the powerhouse huge app experience,
mm,
I would go with this any day of the week.
yeah. And Juan's then come back in and said, really see the goods in Boox apps and functionality. A lot of lagging and ghosting in the reviews. Yeah, but then with, for example, the ghosting, there are ways to change that. And it's like, well, but Boox, if you know there's going to be ghosting in that color content, why isn't it kind of optimized by default that that you don't have the ghosting? Because there's ways to avoid that. You increase the animation filter time, and it's like you need to know to change that setting. It's a little bit like setting up a I don't know if you saw my side quest to set up a NAS the other day, but it's like I I found like, but why is I went into it, but why is that setting on by default? That one setting that seems to make things not work. Why is that the default setting and not the one not? And you're just like that kind of it's gonna be in there somewhere. There's gonna be a box to tick somewhere. There's gonna be something. That's
Yeah, I agree with you, Kit. And I also think what was that Vlad popped up?
So I'm just going to say, and Juan says, and it is great, Juan, isn't it? The way, this is what I love about our community, is in this community on YouTube is, yeah, people helping each other out, responding to each other's comments is brilliant.
Yeah.
And Brad says, yeah,
Yeah,
I thought so as well, but there we are. He just got that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey Moss still has my favorite quote in one of the comments that said, "Did hell just freeze over?" And but yeah, I think it's so.
That's why you've got Inferno behind you, isn't it? You had to go to hell and back, and you brought back Boox.
It is frustrating, I will say, Kid, for people who, I mean, having to optimize every app, and that's why I don't download a lot of apps, because Boox allows you to hit that optimize button, and there's no consistency there between from one app to the other.
Yeah.
And that kind of bothers me a little bit. I think, once you optimize that app, it does a really good job of, and so far I'm on the beta and they have a recommended setting that does really well.
Yeah, they are trying to do more of that. Some apps are some very common apps are pre-optimized.
Yeah.
But for example, yeah, the setting, the anti-ghosting setting that you're looking for is there in either HD or Regal. You can do this, and you go into more, and you up the animation filter.
Yep.
Where did I say that the answer would be? It's usually in a menu that's called more. But these are the settings that I need to use it the way that I want to use it, and that's the thing. I think that when I watch, for instance, Void talk about what tools he wants in his slimmed down toolbar, they're a different set of tools to what I use. And that's take the time to customize things, take the time to go on that little customization journey. Yes, it's frustrating at times, but once you get through that, then good things are on the other side. I normally say to folks, when you start using an e-ink tablet, there'll be a time where you think, oh, it's so frustrating learning this new thing. I'll just reach for my paper notebook. And if you avoid that temptation, if you don't go for the paper notebook at that point, and you say, I will get through this learning curve and I will fight, then good things are just over that hurdle, because then you'll start to embrace it for what it is, and then you'll start to see the real benefits of it. So, yeah. And
and I think once you do that, you won't go back. I think you're 100% right about that. And I think that, for me, I never had that moment because the Supernote was intuitive enough to where I just didn't even think about going back to a pad of paper. But I also, I don't want to act like my experience is the same as everyone else's. For me, I was fairly tech savvy. I'd used these things in the iPad form before and in the tablet form. So to jump to something like this that had a tool set I could use just made my work so much easier. It was like, why would I ever go back to paper and trying to find it on my desk or in a stack of notepads?
Awesome. Thanks so much for the
Thanks, Shad.
very pleasant. Thanks, Shad. Appreciate you. So my next question, then, Ed, how were you expecting the experience to be with Boox? How were you expecting to use it differently to Supernote?
Yeah, this was hard. I saw, you kind of shared a little bit with me beforehand. So I didn't expect my workflow itself to change that much because I'm highly folder driven. So for me, and let me switch over here and I'll see if I can show this a little bit. So for me, if I go back to the home screen here, and when I go into my notes and I go into all, and I do love the widgets, you'll see I've got a folder structure very similar to the way I do everything else. The biggest issue here is I was expecting this to be as intuitive and easy, and it is in some ways. But the thing that shocked me the most was I expected it to be easier to share information off of the device. And maybe it's because I use the plugin for Supernote into Obsidian, but getting text off of here is very difficult. So when you go in, and I'll only do this for a second, but if you go into a note, if it loads here, hopefully I didn't break it. You only get an option for text.
I do agree, though. I think this is something about about Android in a way, isn't it? Like Android can be really frustrating just to get things from one app to another or off the device, as you say. iOS as well, Windows, I never find an issue with that, or even Linux once you know where to find things. But Android can be very difficult in terms of that sort of sharing that information out.
Yeah, and so like if you kind of 100%, and I think it's the options that bother me. There are less options here, or I shouldn't say there are less. There are less useful options for me as a user here than there are in the Supernote, because Supernote gives you PDF, it gives you vector PDF, and it gives you JPG, it gives you text or rich text or Word. So actually, they do add in rich text and Word, and for me, that makes a huge difference, because then I can just go straight to Word, open up that document, and start editing. I can't do that here. I can open it up as a text file, and Jay is working on an awesome thing for Boox called rectangular file. It'll help read all of this, but it's a big deal for me because it comes in as an unformatted block of text, and if I want to reflow it at all, I have to do it in this app, and then on the device, and even then, I still have to reflow it more when I get it off the device. So it may sound like a small thing, but to me, it's a huge thing in my workflow because it just doesn't allow me to do the things that I need it to do, and it's frustrating. So I mean that was a surprise to me. I thought this was going to be so much easier. I'd be able to share to uh, Google Drive. I'd be able to share to email, and it was great. I shared with you my notes, Kit, via email using the Boox app in the Boox native format, so you could open those. But
I couldn't open it at my end because it's a Boox Note file. So one thing I'd suggest you try is they added the option to every time you close a note, it can save also as a PDF.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sync to Google Drive, and you've got all of those PDFs in your Google Drive, so you can read them on any machine. It might be worth looking at that.
It's an issue. It's the text.
Sorry, I'm losing you.
Because I tend to draft and then background, and when I can export as a Word document, and then just open that Word document right from the app on my computer locally and start editing. And so that's the difference. As a PDF, it does great with that. It exports as a PDF. You can export headers or their version, the outline, as markers, as table of contents, which is awesome. But I work a lot in starting with handwriting and then going to text. And the most effective way I've found to be able to do that is using the way Supernote does it so far. Now, that may change, but again, and that's a very specific use case. So I don't want people to think that, because I do it this way, that's the only way it can be done. But for me, that was a huge change, because I just, rightly so or not, expected it to be easier to share from Boox than Supernote.
So I think you're talking about the background text recognition in the Mantle. I don't have that on for this notebook, I don't think, because this is just my sort of scribbled planner, but something that I might have that on, probably this one. And I find this really good. And you just see, as you're writing in the background, it is already translating that into text, which is good. But I mean, this isn't as accurate as it could be. And I think partly that's my handwriting's fault. One thing I'd be really interested to see, we're not going to talk about it today, but maybe in another similar formatted live stream, but you'll also notice on Ed's channel, he's just unboxed a Viwoods AI paper. And I think now, with all of these companies overhauling their text recognition systems, because at the minute they're looking at individual stroke recognizing, whereas the way that ChatGPT would see this is that they would just take that as a screenshot, and they would do this quite holistically across the whole piece, and they'd work out what my meaning might be intended to be, and they'd look at the each of the words and within that context. And so there'd be far less of this type of thing. People on your CM, it would work that out. Fran, a mile a game, you know, there is, I have no idea what I was talking about writing this proper journal thing some time ago. Go back to this. But my point is, it's brilliant. It is really good the way it is. But we're due the next level of this, I think. I think that one thing I've been doing on Boox, for instance, is just grabbing a screenshot and chucking it straight into ChatGPT. And essentially, Viwoods is allowing you to do that natively in the app. And that's an interesting change. I think we'll see all of them go to that. Apart from maybe Remarkable, who won't ever allow you to do anything so sensible as that. Yeah, fascinating, interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting that you were expecting that, and it didn't really live up to your expectations, I suppose.
And what's sad about that, Kid, is the text recognition itself on Boox is so much better. And you're going to hear me say that, it's so much better than on the Supernote.
Right.
It gets far less false positives. It does an excellent job of capturing what I wrote. The problem is getting it out of the device in a usable, actionable format for me to be able to put into something that then I can copy direct. I can go ahead and format in Word and then copy paste into Obsidian, or just export to Obsidian, and then it's already reflowed in a really good way. So yeah, I mean, it's a very niche use case, but their OCR is excellent and better, quite frankly, than what Supernote offers. The biggest issue is getting it out is not as easy.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see how that develops for you if you sort of crack that one, because maybe there's an option in more somewhere that sort of solves that one for you. This is an interesting one. Jason's not, you can't do a multi-page document in one in that way. No, although you could export as an entire PDF, and ChatGPT, if you send it a PDF up to about 10 pages, I don't think there is a limit. I'm pretty sure you could transpose it that way. And Viwoods, they allow you to do it in a meeting notes for more than one page now. And I asked if you would do that why can't you do that in their notebooks? And they say that's coming for Viwoods in notes. But anyway, we'll leave Viwoods to one side because we're comparing these two right now, and I'll let you get your head around that before I quiz you on that one. Is this useful, everybody? Let me know. This is really, thanks Ed so much for answering these questions. It's really good stuff. And it's odd because most of the time your microphone is perfect, and then occasionally it does go. It's odd, and it's odd as well that it didn't happen at all just before the stream. As soon as we went live, it seemed to change. So apologies for that, but you've been fine. So let's not worry about it and fire on. Okay, so what about Color Ink then? That was the next one. Is it your first time with Color Ink?
It is. I haven't experienced it at all. So, and I think I mentioned this in the original video that I actually was more interested in the Note Max because it was something in the size format, and Boox was great. I mean, we had a good back and forth, and they said, well, we would really like your thoughts on this tablet. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take a look at it. And I'd seen some of the reviews. Color to me is nice to have. Like when I notice it, it's really cool. If I'm looking at something on the web, if someone sends me a picture, it's more like newsprint, which I actually like. That callback, that kind of nostalgia to the way newsprint looks. And so I enjoy it. I don't use it though. So I'm not actively using it. So you'll notice none of my top 3 had anything to do with color.
Yeah.
Because I just don't use it. I don't use it to highlight because yellow's all I need. Now I know a lot of people color code, and that's great if that's the way that you do these different things. But it's and you know there is some research around that, but at the same time, the deep reading functions that you get with black and white and the really kind of granular details you can get, that works fine for me. So I'm not saying that there's no point to the color. I think if you're highly app driven, or if you're using something, and you've made the point before, Kit, that distinguishing even between the app icons makes a huge
Yeah,
difference
that's
in
what I
having
was
the
just kind
color.
of. I was just looking at a few apps there just to show you what I mean by that. Just yeah, within apps. I mean, on a black and white, I know they're not icons, but those four things are certainly two of them, and two of them are very similar tones. And so it could well be the case that actually within a certain app, you couldn't necessarily see the difference between certain icons. This was something that actually I featured heavily in a video, because when I did it, when I just looked at it, I thought, wow, this is something that's really impressed me. This is just some NASA photos, but does everyone know what that image is? That's the most impressive image we as a human race probably have ever taken. This is just like every dot of light is another galaxy, and that's a tiny little patch of sky out there that Hubble took. Every dot, isn't it? They aren't stars, those little tiny dots. They are galaxies, and
It's amazing.
each galaxy has like 200 billion stars in it. And like when you look at something like this, all of a sudden you realize actually Kaleido 3 is really good. It's and you're right. And I don't think you have too much of a penalty now in reading on black and white on yeah, it's called the ultra deep field image. So there's two main ones. There's a deep field image, and then they did it again, and that one you just saw was the ultra deep field image. And deep field means like they thought that area was empty. They thought that area before they pointed Hubble at it, and it was yonks ago, and we even go deeper with James Webb now. They thought it was empty, and turned out to be full of galaxies, like billions of them. And there's just like actually you could now see, and as the gentleman had said earlier, Boox is full of ghosting. No, not a ghost inside. That's the texture of that image. No ghosting at all there. I don't believe in ghosts. Oh, that happened. Sorry. I'll let you fire on.
And I would say about color too is I am impressed with it on the device. I think that when I see it, it's like, oh wow, that looks so much better because it's in color. But at the same time, I don't use it in my workflow. For those who do, I think it would be even more meaningful. If I'm going to look at something like an image or a photo, a lot of times that's when I'll go to my phone or I'll go to my computer and I'll want to look at it in that full vibrancy. But if I'm just scrolling news, if I'm on CNN, if I'm on Google News, whatever it is, this gives me another alternative that isn't going to look like super bright or vibrant, but is going to be much better than I thought it would be. I mean, I've seen you, Kit, demo this for a long time, and I really liked your recent video on this in Gallery 3, and I think this looks much better personally. And it's just, and seeing it in person reinforces that.
You get the contrast. That's the thing. Like, actually Gallery 3 would do a good job of these because these are deep blues rather than blacks. But the thing is that you do get proper blacks on here. And so, yeah, I mean, it can really, it can perform. It really can perform. And it's just a matter of, the company that's getting the most out of it is Boox. Bigme aren't far behind doing good things with Kaleido 3 as well. But like, it really can. I mean, that's 150 ppi color, 300 ppi black and white. It's looking good, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. If you don't need to do this, then you don't need color. If words are the things you need to manipulate, then you don't need the color, except maybe with the app icons. But fascinating. It's fascinating, the future for it, and it is certainly true that I've got the lights way up here, I'm sure, which is not nice. Yeah, see, they are maximum. But actually, as I said also, and that's pretty horrible now with the lights off, and the lights here are bright. The lights in my room for the cameras are really bright, but if you seek out like sitting next to a window or something, then the whole thing just lights up, and you're like, it's even better than that's far better. If you want to sit outside on a reasonably bright day, it looks way better than this even. Oh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was kind of the finding the right, and this is just somebody coming new to this whole thing. Finding the right front light balance was really important, because originally I just went mostly cold because it made it brighter. But then, and I don't know if anybody else has had this effect, but when I was writing, the angle that I was looking at my writing made it really glow blue. But if I moved my head and looked straight on, it looked gray, just like a regular e-ink screen.
Yeah.
But then when I added a little bit of warm light, it took that away. So I do mostly cold and a little bit of warm, and it looks like that's how you had it set.
Yeah, that's how I have it.
And that takes away that weird disjointed visual optical effect. I don't know what that would be called. I mean, it's probably in your realm, but you know, it's just this weird optics, because it almost looked like it was glowing unless you were looking straight on. Then it looked normal. And then you add that little bit of warmth, and it changed up that dynamic. And I enjoy writing on this thing. I really do. Not as much as I do the Supernote, because I think it's the nib screen combination.
Oh, yeah. It's
not bad at all.
Yeah, it's the best. Yeah, exactly. The Note series is not bad. Supernote is the best, though. The writing on the Note series is certainly not bad at all. Okay, then the big question, and we're gonna leave the stream in a minute. This stream is going to stop in about 5 minutes or so. We're going to be back. We're trying something new, Ed and I, and as a sort of first go, we're having a bit of a sort of what do we call it? A debrief maybe, or a bit of an after party, and that is available to members of the channel via the members tab. You can see another live stream starting straight after this one, and when you go into that, you'll see that actually it's an invite to come on the screen and talk to us, and talk via video as well, and get involved. It'll be a bit more of a calmer, slower paced, gentler chat, but if you've got questions, great way to get them answered there as well. If not, we'll be back another time. Ed, do you fancy doing a Viwoods stream maybe in a fortnight or so? Would that work?
Yeah, we can probably do that.
We'll schedule that in. That'd be really cool to do that, and a similar kind of thing. We'll discuss more, and I will wait and enjoy your digestion of the Viwoods over the next few days, as well as you. You're going to get like me, though, Ed. You're going to rue the day, because you're going to find that all of a sudden you're back to that place when you had multiple notebooks of thinking, like, which tablet did I write that down in? And that's going to be frustrating, I think. So don't let it get that far. Always, I think, for all you guys in the audience as well, like, love the one you're with. If you're committed to the Supernote system, don't lust after the books. Just really stick with it and enjoy it. Unless you're like you know, Jay, and you're into the tech and you want to understand more, there's nothing wrong with being an enthusiast and really getting involved and really wanting to know more about these things. I think as long as you enjoy it, as long as it's not addictions, and as long as you can reach out to somebody if you need support with your tech addictions. But yeah, exactly, yeah. But the grass is always greener. Yeah, no, I love this. I just absolutely no, stick with yeah, love the one you're with is my advice, really. Interesting one. And lots of chat about the Tab XC. I've covered this a fair amount. I'm thinking about my full Tab XC review at the minute. It's in the works. Probably be a sort of end of summer job, that one, but I'm trying to do something different with that, so you can look forward to my final opinions on that. But it's a banger. It really is a banger, as are all of the top 10, and my top 10 live stream was last week or so. But yes, the big question then, Ed, and yeah, maybe you're not ready to commit right now, maybe, but if you could choose, or if should we make Ed choose? What do you think, audience? You can. I'm not going to do it, but somebody might say no. You must. But you tell us, what if you were to choose? Can you choose right now? or is it more a case that actually you can give us a bit of a kind of, you know, some people should choose this for this reason, the Supernote for this reason, some people should choose the Note F4C for this reason? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, I mean, it would be the Manta all day as far as my personal use case so far. Now, I've only spent 3 weeks with the Note Air 4C, and quite frankly, I would probably be more in the camp of the Note Max or the Go 10.3 if I was going with a Boox device, just because I really like that black and white monochrome feel. But and quite frankly, if the Manta wasn't available, I would even go with the A5X, because to me, it's all about the software, the organizational system, and 90%, 95% of what you can do on the Manta, you can still do on the A5X. So it's that much of an important feature to me to have the app features and the note taking and organizational features. Books, on the other hand, if you're very used to Android devices, if you are embedded in a ecosystem, especially Google, the Note Air is kind of a no-brainer, or a Boox device, I would say, is a no-brainer. If you need color, you're going to want to go with a Boox device. They do it the best, I think, of anybody from what I've seen on reviews and my own personal experience with this device. They do it extremely well. But for me, it would come down to the Supernote system just works so well for the way that I do things that I can't see myself right now switching for any reason, unless Boox all of a sudden fixes and makes it on par with some of those features that are just must-haves for me. And I don't dislike the device at all. I actually have enjoyed working with it. I just don't know until I have more time with it if I have workarounds or if there's some customizations I need to do. So yeah, if you ask me right now, I'm going to go with what I know and what I have 4 years of notes in. That is extremely beneficial to me. And I would recommend, to your point, Kit, everybody else do the same thing. If you're in an ecosystem, then you should pick based on how it complements that ecosystem. If you're not and you're brand new, you should pick based on the features you want. But try to pick on ones that it already has. So don't wish it's going to have this a year from now. Think about what the device does in this moment, and I think that's the big driver for me. It's why I picked the Supernote to begin with, based off of watching you and Voya and Brandon, and it's why I've not been unhappy. I'm doing this more because the idea is that, the more I talk to you and other people who I'm friends with in the space, I feel like I don't have a reference point sometimes to talk about the difference between the Supernote platform and the Boox platform. Now I do, because I can actually say, oh, well, here's how I figured that out, or here's a feature that I know doesn't exist on this device, but does on this other one. And you all can give me wise counsel when I'm way off base and say, Ed, it does that. You just don't know it yet.
Awesome. Okay, so thanks so much, Ed. Thanks so much, everybody here. We're going to have a bit of a debrief and a bit of a calmer chat afterwards. Might get into Viwoods. I know there's something else that you and I wanted to talk about as well in the members chat next. That's say and we're trying something new. I might bring this to a public chat, a public live stream in the future. We will see if there's a way that I can do it without it being total chaos, because it might be chaos. But it won't be total chaos. It will just be a little sprinkling of chaos. But I hope to see you there. If you're a member or if you want to join for that stream, you can all see the post is there. It's something like come join in the chat. And if you are a member, then you can go to the community tab and you should see a link, and it will come in here just like you're joining a Zoom meeting, and we will see you on the other side of that. And I will see you all again real soon. Okay. Ed, anything else you just want to say, just to say good evening to everybody?
Yeah, no, just thank you all so much for being here. Thanks for having this conversation. It's been a blast. It's such a great community, both the people you work with, like Kit, and the people who support all of us that are doing this work. It's just a great place to be a part of. So appreciate you all being here.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Thank you very much once again.